Dad perfect events. When my own daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Face it, Dad, you're just a pathetic old man nobody wants," I never thought those words would come back to haunt her. But life has a funny way of keeping score. My name is Roy Patterson. I'm 67 years old. And this is the story of how I went from sleeping in a trailer park to inheriting $12 million, and how my daughter tried everything to steal it from me. It started on a Tuesday morning in October when my wife Martha set divorce papers on our kitchen table in Augusta, Georgia. After 41 years of marriage, she was done. The crazy part, our daughter Sarah was right there beside her, nodding along like this was all perfectly normal. "It's for the best, Dad," Sarah said, not even looking at me. Mom deserves to be happy. What I didn't know was that Martha had been planning this for months. See, our house was in both our names, but there was a mortgage refinancing document I'd signed the year before. Martha told me it was just paperwork to get a better rate. Turns out it transferred full ownership to her name only. My own wife had been setting me up, and Sarah knew about it the whole time. The divorce took 8 months and left me with almost nothing. I'm a retired construction engineer, spent 40 years reading contracts and blueprints, building everything from shopping centers to apartment complexes across Georgia. But when you trust your family, you don't read every line of every paper they put in front of you. That was my mistake. By January, I was living in Pine Valley Trailer Park on the outskirts of Augusta. It's one of those places where people go when they've run out of options. A collection of weathered single wides and double wides scattered around a gravel lot, with a flickering neon sign that's been missing the V in Valley for about a decade. The trailer I rented smelled like cigarettes and mildew, and the heater made noises like it was dying a slow, painful death. I was 67 years old, sleeping on a mattress that belonged in a dumpster, wondering how 41 years of marriage had led to this. Martha moved her boyfriend Gary into our house, my house, within 3 weeks. He was some insurance salesman she'd met at her book club, 20 years younger, and full of smooth talk about treating her like the queen she deserved to be. Sarah thought this was hilarious. She called me once to let me know. "You should see how happy Mom is," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Gary treats her like a queen, not like some boring old man who just sits around complaining about his back and watching the news." That's when she hit me with the line about being pathetic and unwanted. My own daughter, the girl I'd taught to ride a bike in Riverside Park, helped with algebra homework at our kitchen table, walked down the aisle at her wedding at St. Michael's Cathedral 5 years ago. I hung up and sat in that trailer for a long time, staring at the water stains on the ceiling and listening to my neighbor's dog bark at everything that moved. But I'm an engineer. We don't give up when the first solution doesn't work. We figure out what went wrong and we build something better. It was a Wednesday in late February when everything changed. The Georgia winter had been brutal that year, and I was sitting in the trailer park's little office, a cramped room with paneled walls and a space heater that worked about half the time, pretending to read a magazine while trying to figure out how to stretch my last $300 through the month. That's when Victor Hawkins walked through the door. He was maybe 50, wearing a dark suit that looked expensive, carrying a leather briefcase that had seen some miles. He asked the office clerk, a woman named Dolores Hawd, been running the park for about as long as anyone could remember, if there was a Roy Patterson living on the premises. When I looked up from my magazine, he walked straight over to me. "Mr. Patterson, I'm Victor Hawkins, estate attorney from Atlanta. I've been looking for you for quite some time." I stared at him. "Estate attorney? Nobody I know has died recently." He sat down in the plastic chair across from me, opened his briefcase, and pulled out some official-looking documents. "Your brother Eddie Patterson died last month in California. He left an estate valued at approximately $12 million, and you're named as the primary beneficiary." The magazine fell out of my hands. Eddie died in Vietnam in 1972. Victor shook his head slowly, like he was delivering news head had to deliver before, and knew how hard it was to process. "No, sir. Eddie Patterson survived Vietnam. He left Georgia under difficult circumstances in 1972, but he didn't die. He built a construction and real estate business in California over the past 50 years. He passed away on January 9th of this year. I couldn't process this. Eddie, my older brother by 3 years, the guy who taught me how to throw a curveball in our backyard and read blueprints when I was still in high school. The brother I'd grieved for 51 years, whose name was on the Vietnam Memorial in Washington that I'd visited twice, had been alive this whole time, building a fortune while I thought he was buried in some jungle halfway around the world. There is one condition, Victor said, his voice careful and professional. Due to the circumstances of his disappearance and the complexity of the estate, you'll need to appear for a probate hearing in Los Angeles within 60 days. You'll need to prove your identity as his brother and participate in the legal process. $12 million. I kept repeating that number in my head, but it didn't seem real. What was real was the broken heater rattling behind me and the $300 in my wallet that was all I had left in the world. "I'll do it," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. Victor nodded like head expected nothing less. "The estate will cover all travel expenses and legal fees. I'll arrange everything. You'll need to gather any documents you have proving your relationship to Eddie, photographs, military records, anything from your childhood together." I knew exactly where those things were. There was a box of old stuff that my son Kevin was storing in his garage. Kevin's my younger kid, and unlike Sarah, he actually gives a damn about family. Had been the only one checking on me since the divorce, bringing me groceries every few weeks and pretending he wasn't worried about his old man living in a trailer park. I called Kevin that afternoon from the payphone outside the trailer park office, feeding quarters into the slot while trucks roared past on Highway 78. "I need to come by and pick up that old box of mine," I told him, "the one with the family photos and military stuff." "Sure, Dad. Everything okay?" I was ready to tell him about the inheritance yet. Kevin had enough problems of his own without getting his hopes up about something that might not work out. His own divorce had gone through 2 years earlier, and he was still paying child support and trying to keep his auto repair shop afloat. "Just need some old documents for something. I'll explain later." The box was exactly where I remembered, sitting on a metal shelf in Kevin's garage between paint cans and Christmas decorations that hadn't seen daylight in years. Inside were things I hadn't looked at in decades. Military photos from Eddie's basic training at Fort Benning, letters Head sent me from Vietnam before he supposedly died, our high school graduation picture where we're both grinning like idiots in our caps and gowns, and a Bronze Star medal Eddie had given me before shipping out. "Keep this safe, little brother," Head said, pressing the medal into my hand. "I'll want it back when I come home." He never came home, at least I thought he never did. The flight to Los Angeles was my first time on an airplane in over a decade. Martha had stopped wanting to travel years ago, claiming airports were too stressful and hotel beds hurt her back, and I'd gone along with it like I went along with most of her decisions back then. Sitting by the window on that Delta flight, watching Georgia disappear below the clouds, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in months, I was moving forward instead of just surviving day by day. Victor had arranged a clean hotel near downtown LA, nothing fancy but a hell of a lot better than Pine Valley Trailer Park. The Marriott on Figueroa had a view of palm trees and a bed that didn't try to cripple me when I slept on it. Small things, but when you've been living in a place where the bathroom door doesn't close properly and the refrigerator sounds like a diesel engine, small things matter a lot. The probate attorney was a sharp woman named Ruth Martinez, who looked like she could dismantle a fraudulent claim from across the room without breaking a sweat. Her office was on the 15th floor of a glass tower with windows overlooking the city and law books that looked like they'd actually been read instead of just sitting there for show. She went through my documents with the focused attention of someone who'd seen every possible scam and con game in the book. The photos of Eddie and me as kids, the letters Head sent from basic training, his service records that I'd managed to get from the VA years ago when I was trying to get information about his death. Everything checked out perfectly with her practiced eye. "There's something you should know," Ruth said, looking up from the papers spread across her mahogany desk. "Eddie had a daughter named Beverly Caldwell. She's 45 years old, lives here in LA, and she's been caring for Eddie in his final years. She wasn't named in the will, and she's not happy about that situation. A daughter, Eddie had a daughter Head never told me about, which made sense since I'd thought he was dead for 51 years. There was probably a lot he hadn't told me. Has she been notified about the will, I asked? She has about 2 weeks before we located you. Ruth's expression was carefully neutral, but I caught something in her tone that suggested this timeline wasn't coincidental. 2 weeks. That meant Beverly Caldwell had known about this inheritance and about me for 2 weeks before Victor found me sitting in that trailer park office reading a 3-month-old copy of Popular Mechanics. I should have seen what was coming. Sure enough, the call came 3 days later while I was sitting in the hotel restaurant working my way through a club sandwich that cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a week. Unknown California number lighting up the prepaid phone Kevin had gotten me for Christmas. "Is this Roy Patterson?" The voice was controlled but had an edge underneath it. Like a wire pulled just a little too tight. "It is. My name is Beverly Caldwell. I think we need to talk." She wanted to meet at a restaurant in Beverly Hills called Spago, one of those places where they give you a wine list thicker than most phone books and charge $30 for what's basically a fancy hamburger. Beverly was already seated when I arrived, sitting at a corner table wearing clothes that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She was tall, blonde, with Eddie's square jaw and the kind of confident posture that comes from never having to worry about money. You were Eddie's brother for 20 years, 50 years ago, she said, without any preamble or small talk. I lived with him, took care of him, managed his business affairs for the last decade of his life. He left me nothing. I'm sorry about that, I said, and I meant it. I really am, but I can't change what Eddie decided. Actually, you can. She leaned forward slightly, and I noticed her hands were perfectly manicured, the kind of nails that had never changed a tire or unclogged a drain. I'm prepared to offer you a settlement. $4 million to you, $8 million to me. We split it reasonably. Everyone walks away satisfied, and we avoid a long, expensive legal battle that benefits nobody but the attorneys. I looked at her for a long moment, thinking about what Ruth had told me. Eddie had known this woman for years, lived near her, been cared for by her. And he still left everything to me, his brother he hadn't seen since Richard Nixon was president. That wasn't an accident or an oversight. I appreciate the offer, but no thank you. Something shifted in her face. The polite mask slipped just a little, like paint peeling off a wall. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be. I'm just following the legal process. My father wasn't clear in his final years. She spoke carefully, like she was walking through a minefield. The will doesn't reflect what he really wanted. There it was, the challenge to Eddie's mental competence. I'd seen this playbook before in construction. When someone can't win on merit, they attack the foundation. Well, I said, signaling for the check. I guess that's what the probate hearing is for. When I got back to the Marriott that evening, I knew someone had been in my room. Nothing was taken. I didn't have anything worth stealing anyway, but things had been moved slightly. The notepad by the phone was at a different angle. My shaving kit had been reposited in the bathroom, the kind of professional search you'd do if you were looking for specific documents or information. I called Victor immediately, then hotel security. The key card logs showed someone had entered during a 90-minute window while I was at dinner with Beverly. Professional job, no fingerprints, no obvious signs of forced entry. That's when I knew Beverly wasn't going to play nice. The next morning brought a call that made my blood run cold. Kevin, calling from his auto shop in Augusta, and I could hear the stress in his voice even through the bad connection. Dad, something weird happened. This guy came to the shop yesterday afternoon asking questions about you, said he was doing research for an estate matter. What kind of questions? I asked, though I already had a pretty good idea. Whether you've been acting strange lately, making bad decisions, if you seemed confused about money or legal stuff. Real personal things, Dad. He had a business card from some investigation company in California. I told him to get lost, but it was creepy as hell. I stayed calm on the phone because Kevin didn't need to worry about his father on top of everything else he was dealing with. But inside, I was furious. Beverly was playing dirty, trying to build a case that I was mentally incompetent to inherit, and she was dragging my family into it. But here's the thing, I spent 40 years in construction dealing with contractors who tried to cut corners and clients who tried to change the scope of work after signing contracts. I know how to read people who are trying to run a game on you, and I know how to document everything that matters. So I started documenting. I called Albert Stone, a probate litigation specialist that Victor had connected me with. Albert had been handling inheritance disputes in Los Angeles for 20 years, and when I told him about the hotel break-in and the investigator harassing Kevin back in Georgia, he got very interested very quickly. We need to get all of this documented and on the record, he said during our meeting at his downtown office. Beverly's building a harassment case against her own position, and she doesn't even realize it. Albert was the kind of lawyer who wore rumpled suits and kept stacks of case files on every available surface, but his mind was sharp as a tack. He immediately filed documentation of Beverly's investigators' activities and the hotel incident with the court. The next few weeks felt like a chess match. Beverly would make a move and Wed counter it. She filed a formal challenge claiming Eddie was mentally diminished in his final years and that I was somehow exerting undue influence from 2,000 miles away on a brother I thought was dead. Albert filed counter documentation showing her pattern of harassment and surveillance. Then Beverly made her biggest mistake. She called me directly. Roy, she said, using my first name like we were old friends who went way back. This is getting out of hand. I loved my father and I know what he would have wanted. I'm sure you did love him, I said, keeping my voice neutral. He used to tell me stories about you when he was feeling nostalgic, about how you were always the weak one, the one who needed taking care of. He said you never could handle real responsibility, that you'd probably blow through any money you got in a couple of years. I let that hang in the air for a moment, feeling the old anger that comes from being underestimated your whole life. Then I said, Beverly, I want you to know that I'm recording this conversation. California is a two-party consent state, so I'm informing you now. Dead silence on the other end. If you contact me again outside of the legal process, I'll add it to the harassment documentation. That's already been filed with the court. Have a good day. She hung up, but not before I heard her say something that sounded like son of a bitch. The recording was legal since I'd informed her, and it went straight into our case file as evidence of continued attempts at intimidation. The probate hearing was held in the Los Angeles County Courthouse on a Thursday morning in late March. The building was one of those imposing concrete structures that makes you feel like justice might actually be possible, with marble floors and high ceilings that echo when you walk. The courtroom itself was smaller than I'd expected from watching legal dramas on TV. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights supplementing the natural light from one high window, maybe 30 seats for observers. Judge Martinez looked like a man who'd heard every sob story and seen every con game in the book. He had the patience of someone who'd been dealing with family disputes for decades and found none of them particularly surprising anymore. I sat at the petitioner's table with Albert Stone. Beverly sat across from us with her attorney, a slick-looking guy named Craig Bell, who probably charged more per hour than I used to make in a week. Bell had the practiced composure of someone who'd built a career on billable hours and expensive suits. The hearing started with the basics. Documents establishing Eddie's identity, his will, his medical records. Eddie's primary physician, Dr. Ellen Park, had submitted written statements confirming that Eddie had been cognitively sharp right up until the end, competent when he wrote his original will and when he updated it twice in the years before his death. Then it was Beverly's turn. Bell called her to the stand, and she told her story about caring for Eddie in his declining years, describing memory lapses and confusion that somehow never made it into any medical records or official documentation. Bell introduced a letter that he claimed Eddie had written to Beverly approximately 2 years before his death, expressing doubts about his estate plans and his decision to leave everything to his distant brother who probably wouldn't know what to do with the responsibility anyway. The letter was handwritten on Eddie's personal stationery, emotional and rambling, talking about how Head changed his mind about the inheritance and wanted Beverly to contest the will if anything happened to him. Albert requested time to examine the letter. Judge Martinez granted it without hesitation. Albert spent maybe 5 minutes looking at it under a magnifying glass, comparing it to samples of Eddie's handwriting from medical documents, business contracts, and personal notes that spanned the same time period. Then he approached the bench with the careful precision of a man who'd found exactly what he was looking for. Your Honor, this document shows several characteristics inconsistent with Mr. Patterson's established handwriting patterns. The letter formation, the spacing, even the pen pressure are all different from authenticated samples. I'd like to request forensic document examination before this can be admitted as evidence. Bell objected loudly, claiming the request was just a delaying tactic, but Judge Martinez overruled him. The letter was held pending forensic analysis. I watched Beverly's face when that happened. She went very still, and her eyes darted to someone in the gallery, a man I didn't recognize but figured was probably one of her investigators or consultants. Then Albert cross-examined Beverly, and he was methodical about it, taking her through her own timeline piece by piece. When had she hired private investigators to look into my background? Why hire them before Eddie's primary beneficiary had even been identified? What was her relationship with the man who'd visited my son Kevin in Georgia? Beverly tried to deny knowledge of the Georgia trip, but Albert had phone records showing multiple calls between her and the investigation company on the days before and after Kevin was contacted. She was caught in a lie, and everyone in that courtroom could see it. That's when she lost control completely. This is ridiculous. Beverly said, not responding to any question Albert had asked, just talking to the room like she was giving a speech. He abandoned his family 50 years ago. He doesn't deserve this money. Judge Martinez looked up from his notes with the kind of expression that could freeze water. Ms. Caldwell, please confine your remarks to questions from counsel. His a bitter old man living in a trailer park, Beverly continued, her voice rising and cracking. My father felt sorry for him. He told me Roy never amounted to anything, never built anything that mattered. Miss Caldwell, the judge said with deadly calm, you will limit yourself to responsive answers to questions asked by the attorneys. Craig Bell was on his feet, hand on Beverly's arm, trying to get her to stop talking, but she was done pretending to be the grieving, reasonable daughter. I earned this money. I took care of him when he was sick. I managed his business. Some stranger doesn't get to walk in and take what I worked for. In the silence that followed, I sat with my hands folded and looked at the American flag behind the judge's bench. I thought about Eddie, wondered what Head think of this circus, wondered if Head known his daughter would react this way, and if that's why Head left everything to me instead. The forensic analysis of Beverly's letter took 11 days. The report was 3 pages of technical language that reduced to one simple conclusion. The letter was inconsistent with Eddie's established handwriting patterns and had been written within the past 8 months. Eddie had been dead for 14 months. The letter was a forgery. Craig Bell withdrew from Beverly's case within 48 hours of the forensic report being delivered to all parties. In legal terms, that's like watching a ship's captain abandon ship. It tells you everything you need to know about what he thinks is coming next. Beverly tried to get new representation, but 3 different attorneys declined to take her case in sequence. When a central piece of your evidence has been proven fraudulent, most lawyers won't touch you with a 10-foot pole. The final hearing was almost anticlimactic. Beverly showed up alone, sitting at her table without legal representation. She looked smaller somehow, defeated before the proceedings even started, wearing a simple black dress instead of the expensive outfits from before. Judge Martinez didn't deliberate long. The estate's legal standing was clear. The documentation was thorough, and the only challenge had been built on forged evidence and harassment tactics. He ruled in my favor. The estate of Edward Patterson, $12 million, passed to Roy Patterson, lawful brother and sole beneficiary as explicitly stated in the will. I signed the papers in Albert's office that afternoon. My hand was steady. The legal consequences for Beverly unfolded over the following weeks with the institutional patience of systems that don't hurry but always arrive eventually. Submitting forged documents in probate court is a felony in California. The district attorney opened an investigation. The private investigators Shed hired were also under scrutiny for their interstate harassment activities. I didn't feel triumph watching her world collapse. I felt tired and sad and ready to move forward with whatever came next. I decided to stay in California. Found a good apartment in San Diego, a 2-bedroom place in Mission Hills with a view of the bay and morning light that falls exactly the way I like it. For the first time in my adult life, I was living entirely on my own terms, making decisions based on what I wanted instead of what someone else needed. I called Kevin and told him to quit his second job at the auto parts store. I was taking care of his mortgage payments and his daughter's college fund. He tried to refuse, said he could handle his own problems, but I told him it wasn't negotiable. My son had stood by me when everyone else walked away, checking on me in that trailer park, never making me feel like a burden. That loyalty meant everything. Sarah tried calling me once about 6 months after the inheritance became public knowledge. She had heard through the family grapevine, probably from Kevin, and wanted to reconnect and work through our differences. I listened to her voicemail twice, then deleted it. Some bridges, once burned, aren't worth rebuilding. Beverly got a suspended sentence and a fine that took most of her remaining savings. Her private investigator friends distanced themselves when the legal heat got too intense. Last I heard through Albert, she was working at a department store in Pasadena and living in a studio apartment, a far cry from the lifestyle Shed been planning to fund with Eddie's money. Martha and Gary broke up about 8 months after the inheritance news went public in Augusta's social circles. Apparently, when Gary realized that Martha's daughter was a convicted felon who wouldn't be contributing to their retirement dreams, and that her ex-husband was now worth more than both of them combined, he found other living arrangements. Martha tried reaching out through Kevin, asking if I might be interested in talking things through, but I wasn't interested in conversations with people who'd already shown me exactly who they were. I started taking woodworking classes at the community college, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for when I was building other people's projects. Built myself a coffee table, then a bookshelf, then started making toys for Kevin's daughter. Small things but satisfying in a way that commercial construction never was. I joined a veterans support group not because I needed therapy but because I wanted to be around guys who understood what it meant to have a brother who didn't come home from war. Found out I wasn't the only one carrying that particular weight. Most mornings, I walk down to the harbor and watch the fishing boats head out. The air smells like salt and possibilities, and I drink coffee that tastes better than anything I had in 40 years of marriage. Small pleasures, but when you've lived in a trailer park wondering if you'll make it through the winter, small pleasures feel enormous. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about the years I lost, the money Martha and Sarah cost me, the time I spent thinking Eddie was dead. The answer is no. Anger is just disappointment with nowhere to go. And I've got too many good days ahead of me to waste them looking backward. That's how a 67-year-old man who lost everything to family betrayal ended up with more than had ever dreamed of. Not just the money, the knowledge that when everything was stripped away, he still knew who he was and what he stood for. Dignity can't be taken from you. It can only be given away, and I stopped giving mine away the day I decided to fight back. What would you have done in that trailer park? I'd truly like to know. Sometimes the people who try to convince you you're worthless are just afraid you'll discover how much you're actually worth. The best revenge against those who underestimate you isn't proving them wrong. It's building a life so good that their opinion becomes irrelevant.